Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Spiritual Psychics TV and this show, Being Spiritual, with your host, me, Ashley Robinson. It's wonderful to be here this evening with you folks. If you're watching live, then of course you know it's the 24th of February, but I know some people watch this on playback. And of course I can say you're not watching it on playback now, you are watching it live. But of course, if you're watching it on playback and you weren't live, then you would know that anyway. Now, before I continue to dig myself into a deep pit of make mistakes on this, let's crack on with the show, shall we? So welcome to Spiritual Psychics TV. Tonight's show is a spiritualist philosophy show. It's your opportunity, folks, to ask me anything, absolutely anything that you want to talk about, spiritualism, psychic, things that go bump in the night, and we will have a bit of a chat. And throughout your questions, every time you throw in a question, I'll be delivering either a spiritualist mediumship message, perhaps I'll give a card reading or a little sort of psychic message. We might do some color reading this evening. For those that are regular viewers and have come back, then of course you know all of this, and it is wonderful to have you back this evening. Darianne Smith says hello. She's on Facebook. If you're joining us new, folks, then let me know where you're watching the show from tonight. If you're a first-time viewer, it's great to have you with us this evening. And we'll get your comments in the studio. So it's an interactive show, folks. Do get your hellos in. Test that interactiveness on Facebook. Make sure you're following the live stream. Just follow and then comment on the wall. Why not share the stream while you're waiting on YouTube, folks? Make sure you're participating in the live chat. Phil Shaw says, good evening, Ash, Richard, and everyone. Hiya, Phil. My good friend Phil Shaw, physical medium, spiritualist medium based at Wimbledon, will be on the show in a couple of weeks' time, folks. Mum and Dad, Ray and Jackie Robinson, good evening to your guests and to your producer, Richard. Thank you, Mum and Dad. Yeah, spent a few hours with you today, organising our spiritual and psychic weekend, Spirit Seeker, where we'll be producing several events over next weekend, folks. Christine Davis joins us on YouTube. Some of you watching have been to one of our spiritual and psychic weekends. If you don't know what we're talking about, head over to spiritseeker.co.uk after the show and have a little read. Simon Butte joins us on Facebook. And of course, for those of you watching from home, you can watch a lot of what we'll be doing, a lot of the things we'll be getting up to next weekend. It takes place in Bournemouth next weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and there will be opportunities for Richard to produce live from Bournemouth, and we'll have a load of different things. There's about 30, 40 different things going on throughout the weekend for our residential guests, and we'll be picking a few of those highlights for you. Stacey Thomas says hello to everybody, joins us on Facebook tonight. Good evening to you, Stacey. And while you're looking on your phones or your internet browsers, remember to check out sptv.uk. Let's have a bit of a refresh. Ava Rose Evans from Phoenix, Arizona, across the pond in the US of A. Good evening to you, Ava. SPTV UK, fantastic website, folks. Lots of great resources on there. Steve Welling says hello from Canada. Good evening to you, Steve. Welcome to the show this evening. Start thinking about your questions, folks, and the things you might like to take us off in that direction. We got Jill Reynolds from Birmingham. Hopes that they get a message. So, Jill, make sure you've got some questions. For people that ask me good questions tonight, they'll be the first people that I'm drawn to, and I'll give some messages this evening. And I'll be looking forward to taking all of your questions, folks. I want to see which way and which direction we go into. So I always meditate before this show, and I get a bit of a theme. Neris Taylor, shout out to Wales. A massive shout out to all my Welsh viewers this evening. Good evening to you, Neris. Lovely to have you with us this evening. And Krish Pillay, hi from South Africa. Hi there, Krish. Welcome this evening. Lovely Julie Caswell, gonna miss Spirit Seeker Weekend. She'll watch online. Julie, great follower of a supporter, ambassador for us at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church. We'll miss you too, Julie. Particularly the experimental seance on Friday night, this time next week. Natalie Bentley joins us on Facebook. Folks, we might talk a little bit about the experimental seance. You know, as an online viewer, what sort of thing is interesting for you to see? Heavenly Sprinkles says, good evening, Ashley and Richard. Hi, Claire. Good evening to you. And Heavenly Sprinkles, Claire, had a show on last night, folks. I hope some of you had the opportunity to check that out. Viano, Tracy, hello from South Africa. How does one develop their psychic ability? Good question, Vienna. And ultimately, we all have psychic and abilities to work with spiritual gifts. So it's all about taking that step. It's all about being aware that we can work with those gifts. Ideally, you want to find yourself a leader, maybe a circle leader at a spiritualist church or centre. Head over to SPTV UK. There's a directory there of international leaders and churches and centres. There are, of course, a lot of good online resources too, some of, again, on SPTV UK. And it's all about asking the right questions. It's all about attunement. It's all about practice, because we can all draw. Viano, we can all draw. Some of us will have natural abilities. Some of us will be more talented than others. But if we keep practicing, if we get some instruction, we get some guidance, we get feedback on our drawings, then we can improve. But again, the beauty of the talent is often in the eye of the beholder. So, you know, there's an opportunity to develop your psychic and spiritual gifts. Just find someone to help you, find some good resources, and work on practice your attunement. And for asking the first question, I'm going to draw a card for you. The card I've drawn for you is the card of birth. This card is beautiful green saplings, and as we're just approaching spring in the UK, I love the idea of this green shoots, new green shoots starting to come to life. And in particular, this picture has just got like little bits of water that have come down. And I want to say that actually you asked this question about development, and that card I drew for you is all about the start for me. It's all about the birth. It's about creation. It's about incarnation. It's also about understanding your own self and being more aware. Some people talk about spiritual awakening, and I want to say with you at the moment, you are very aware of what's happening in and around your mind's eye, about the things that you're not necessarily traditional senses that you're relying on, Vienna. And this card is just recognition of that. Keep going. You've got some work to do. You've got some investment. You've got some nourishment requirements. You need to be nourished. You need to be well watered. You need to make sure that you turn to face the sun like a good sunflower. We know the sun will rise in the east and set in the west. Turn and face that sun. Get that beautiful energy of the sun, and keep on doing what you're doing. So keep asking questions, Viano, and keep doing what you're doing. Okay. If I've not said hello to anyone else that is watching the show today, then hello to all of you. Hello to all of the people that I didn't get to name. No, lovely Terry Louise joining us as well on YouTube this evening. But yeah, wonderful international congregation of people this evening. So I started speaking about experimental sounds, and for those of you that have perhaps watched in last October or last year, what did you think about the experimental sounds we did? We had the infrared cameras on. What sort of thing is interesting for you? Now, Limo Dipimo says, can spirits have wrong ideas of how they died, like they were murdered when they weren't, or the other way around? Anything's absolutely possible, Limo, and a lot of it, in my opinion, depends on their understanding before they die of what life after life could look like, would look like, because heaven, the afterlife, the spirit world, it's exactly what we need it to be. So if we find ourselves in there prematurely, we haven't sort of died in our sleep of a very old age of otherwise sort of natural causes. If something has happened to us and we suddenly find ourselves in that spirit world and it's end of experience, then it can be like this massive jolt. I often hear from communicators as a spiritualist medium that they have to go off and have some sort of psychological support, for their mental health, even though they don't have a physical body, from the shock of their passing or of the circumstances and their lifestyle in that last chapter. It can all just be too overwhelming for them. So certainly when they start to communicate, there can be misunderstandings. I find that once they're there and they're stable, then they start to find out. I've also had confirmation from people that have been murdered and within seconds can see the person that's murdered them running off, and they want to sort of help find justice. And in fact, folks, for those of you in the UK, there was a lot of stuff in the news this week because one of my previous guests, Jason, has been featured in some of the media. Him and another person happened to be by a river when they called the police because they found a body, or what looked like a body, floating in the water, and that body turned out to be a young lady who had been missing. And her body, sadly, was the body of the lady that was missing. It was found about a mile away from where she'd originally went missing. And if you look at some of that news, you'll see that comments that Jason has made, that he believes that some of the spiritual gifts that he works with influenced him and told him where that body may be, and he was able to refer that to the police. So you could argue from that point of view, Limo de Pimo, that spirits want to work with us, they want to help us, perhaps they want to find justice. Equally, there are people that go missing, or their bodies go missing, that they've passed to the spirit world and they don't communicate at all. So I think it's very much a personal choice. It's about the personal circumstances, and there can be a little bit of confusion. If something happened and they weren't aware of it consciously, let's say that someone was killed in their sleep and they woke up in the spirit world, they might not know how they died. They may have found themselves straight in the spirit world. They weren't able to see what was going on around that 3D world and that experience, so it wasn't as important. And all of a sudden, they're like, what happened? I've been snatched away. I wasn't expecting this to be. Unless they go off and find people that do know, then they themselves can be in a bit of a state of confusion. And I've worked with victims of crime, and I worked with a lady who was alive, whose friend had been murdered, and her friend was trying to tell her a little bit about who had murdered her, but she didn't know. So even though she had died and she had now found herself in the spirit world, she didn't know who it was that had killed her. Now, she was able to give her friend a description of what the person looked like. And I took that description down. We passed it on to the police. And actually, they did link some DNA to somebody, and they did make an arrest in that case. And actually, the description that the friend had given was incredibly accurate, really, based on the actual person that did commit that murder. But the person in the spirit world didn't know. They didn't know how they'd died, only that they'd been on their way home from a night out, and that all of a sudden they're in the spirit world, and they could describe the violence of a situation which led to it. So yeah, good question, Limo. And I'm going to draw a card for you. This card is the voyage. The voyage. And as we go on this trip, we've got this old-fashioned ship, this beautiful ship. I'm transported, straight back to the early sort of days of people like Christopher Columbus, out there looking to explore things and have experiences as Christopher Columbus for the first time, and therefore, in his opinion, find things for the first time. But of course, all of these lands were very well known to previous sort of inhabitants. And I want to say that part of you taking a journey at the moment, Lima, you would understand this sense of wanting to go out there. There's also this element of wanting to explore the unknown, to experience new things, but they aren't necessarily new. They are new to you, and that you are welcome to this. You've put the sails up. I see you at the top of the mast, looking forwards, looking for those experiences, looking for those opportunities, armed with a compass in one hand and the fresh air. Off you go. And I'm sort of getting this real sense, Limo, of keep on keeping on. So hopefully you understand that message, and I've answered your question. And you don't have to give any feedback on none of these messages, folks. But if they don't make sense, then do let me know. Heavenly Sprinkles, Claire says, "What was your first experience of the spirit world, and how did you feel?" Oh, lovely question, Claire. Thank you very much. For those that haven't heard me talk about this before, I was born into spiritualism. Yeah, my mum and dad were both involved in spiritualism when I was born, some 40 years ago. My dad is the mum are both current presidents of Wimbledon Spiritualist Church in South London and Hatbridge Spiritualist Church. At the time, in 1982, when I was born, my grandfather was the president of Wimbledon Spiritualist Church. So for me, spiritualism was very much a way of life. And I grew up with this knowledge of life after death. And therefore, for me, it was very natural. But actually, as a toddler, before I could really comprehend some of the learning that I later made, I had a friend from the spirit world, a beautiful guide who works with me now as a guide, Marigold, a young girl who had died during the Victorian era. And she had first made herself present to my mum and dad in one of my dad's spiritual circles, and had said that she would be my guide. and that she was aware that I was about to incarnate as a human being. And she continued to give evidence by playing with me as a baby. And actually, my mum and dad witnessed some fantastic physical phenomenon. And I have vague memories of a train set. Now, my mum and dad have this vision of a train set flying gently through the air. But my sort of young toddler memory is of Marigold holding this train. And Marigold used to play games and sing songs with me. And it was only as I got a little bit older, I was sort of surprised that Marigold never seemed to arrive through the front door. She would suddenly be there and suddenly not. And that sometimes when I was involved in mischief, and I certainly had a desire for mischief, both as an adult and as a youngster, Marigold would sometimes be involved in that. So really, my first experience of that spirit that I can remember is of feeling fantastic, feeling absolutely fantastic, feeling unconditional love and excitement of being in the presence of Marigold, who only later on in life did I realize that she was fully of the spirit, that she resided in the spirit world. I will draw a card for you, Claire. And if it's okay, I'll give you a spiritualist message too, because I want to talk about the fact that despite growing up in spiritualism, I actually always said that my mum and dad, I hope you don't mind, I'm not going to follow in your footsteps. I think the gifts are wonderful. I've had evidence of life after death, but I hope you don't mind, I'm not going to follow in your feet. And actually, I've just qualified as an accredited spiritualist celebrant. I'm going to be an ordained minister, hopefully later this year. I am a spiritualist medium. I'm delivering a spiritualist philosophy show now. So things do change. And I think I was about 18 years when I started sitting in a formal circle for development. In fact, Mary Dixie, one of my circle leaders, is on this evening, Claire. And I was probably about 13 or 14 when one of my circle lead or later circle leaders, a lady called Jill Hay, actually, who's a God sort of mother figure to me, she helped me learn to close down. That was my first sort of formal training, because I was finding it all a bit overwhelming as a teenager, not really able to sort of choose when spirit were communicating. But then at 18, I wanted to be able to turn it back on and work on that attunement. And then I sat right through circle, sitting in circle right up to last year. So for me, there's always that opportunity to invest. So hopefully, Claire, that answers your question. It was a good question. Now, I'm not going to give you your card just yet, Claire. I'm going to attempt to give you evidence of a communicator. And the person I've got communicating with you, Claire, is a man. And this man claims to be a member of your family. He's talking about being a father. He's talking about being a grandfather. And he's showing me linked back to your mum. So I think I've got a man here claiming to be family, related to you via blood, via your mum. This father, this grandfather, he is giving me the letter G. Now I know that G is also symbolic for grandfather, but I think G for golf, sounding noise I was just getting, is also symbolic for him. You'd understand this man. Takes me over towards the left hand side of his body, around his heart. He talks around heart failure being one of the things that was listed on his death certificate. He's also talking about a sense of being smothered. Okay, Georgie was his name. Thank you very much, Claire, for that feedback. This sense of smothering, tightness around my chest. I felt like there was this impact on me and around my breathing, around my lungs, and this tightness around my chest. And as he links in, he was talking about the fact that he influenced me pulling the card, and the card is a decision question, and you're talking about the heartache. Thank you for that, Claire. What he's talking to me about, Claire, is the fact that okay, thank you. He's talking about last autumn. Okay, and he's talking, he's giving me all the beautiful colors of autumn, and he's talking about you working hard. Okay, and in this sort of symbolic thing, he's talking about you in the fields. Okay, and now was the time to reap the profits, to reap the crops. You'd planted all these seeds, you'd worked really hard, and now the crops had come up, and you had to act. Okay, and I've got this real sense of you working really hard over autumn and into winter, working really hard on these fields, and the sun sort of days getting sort of lighter. So I've got this real sense of autumn into winter, and this transformation as we come out of winter and we're approaching sort of spring. Now is what he is telling to me, and that was the card that he drew here. Now. and he's sort of screaming it and shouting it, and he's talking about a level of excitement involved in that. Now is the time. Keep on keeping on. Forwards, onwards, upwards, rising. And he's talking about this sun rising and closing, the days getting longer, and this real sort of build up of excitement. So, Claire, that's your communicator, and confirmation that the decision that you were thinking about, meant, yeah, absolutely. Now, act up, forwards, onwards, rising. Thank you, Claire. Good question. I hope you've understood your communicator. I think you certainly have, and I hope that you've understood the message. Good question. So keep the questions coming, folks. Stacey Theron says, hi, Ashley. Hey, Richard. Hi. How's it going, Stacey? Good evening to you. Brett Robinson, my cousin, look like a member of Kiss Band in that picture. Evening, cars. We're watching here with Mum, Amber. They all say hello. Lovely. Hi, Auntie Julie and cousin Amber. Good evening to you all. I imagine you're up in the Northwest. So sending you all some love and some light. Simon Butte says, what form do spirit come through in a human form? Just so I can understand the context of that, Simon, do you mean when spirit communicate with me, what form do they come in? That's how I'm going to answer it, but do add a point of clarification if I've got that wrong. So it depends. 9 times out of 10, Simon, what I am seeing is I am seeing the spiritual self, so a recreation of their body in a spiritual form, and I'm seeing it not with my actual eyes, but within my mind's eye. So as I close my eyes, almost like a blank canvas or a mirror, I get these vivid images, and I start to hear and see things present themselves on that mirror. And I say 9 times out of 10, it happens exactly like that, and they recreate themselves without any of the imperfections that they may have had with the body. Sometimes younger, sometimes fitter, sometimes stronger, sometimes better looking or with better hair, and they produce themselves in that spiritual form. Now, so that happens 9 times out of 10. Earlier on today, I was at our sister church, Hatbridge, when I physically saw spirits, and I saw them in the porchway entrance to the church, and I think it was one of our ancestor guardians that was protecting the church there, and they gave me like a court bow as I walked into the church today. It only took place in a very split second, and then they sort of almost dissolved. I also got that smell. For those of you that work with physical phenomena, I had that sort of just brief smell of ectoplasm. I was desperate to try and capture something, but there was nothing that I could capture on on my phone. But felt like they'd made a real effort in that porchway entrance of Hatbridge Church to show themselves to me. Although I'm aware of a guardian figure at Wimbledon Church, it's the first time I've ever seen one of the guardians of Hatbridge Church show themselves to me. Again, I spoke about as a teenager being overwhelmed. I can remember seeing Women of Spiritualist Church absolutely full, hundreds of spirit all sat down in the chairs after the service had finished, all waiting. Where's the medium gone? I've still got a message to go. So yeah, sometimes I physically see things, and again, for the vast majority of occasions, spirit are choosing to reproduce themselves in the last personality, that human shell they had, and they're producing them in that way. Now, on a show like this, being spiritual, Simon, I have a small committee of people. I call them the Exco, my executive committee, that helped me make my decisions and influence my philosophy. The chairperson of that was a good friend of mine, Ralph Steadman. And Ralph Steadman actually presents himself in lots of different ways. And Ralph used to talk about the fact that he had previously incarnated perhaps tens of thousands of times. And he likes to give me different glimpses of different personalities that he has lived. And I feel that's an element of his higher self. And there are a couple of guides. There's my guide, Bob Brunton, who I used to refer to as my principal mediumship guide. Bob was a godfather figure to me while he was alive. He shows himself in the form that I remember seeing him as a young boy. But I've got a Native American guide called Bear. Bear sometimes actually shows himself as elements, particularly water and running water, as a sign that he is around, and that connection to water. And I had a lovely lady called Ashley Mills on this show a little while ago. We spoke about realms, we spoke about Pegasus, and we spoke about Fairy Kingdom, and we spoke about dragons. And sometimes I have spirit beings present themselves in that way. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think it was 3 weeks ago, wasn't it? We had Brigitte Visa on the show. She used to share a show on SPTV called, I've forgotten now. ancients, something of the ancients, origins. There we go, origins of the ancients. And she's also spoke about sort of what we might describe as aliens and other beings, intelligence, across the universe. And there are elements within meditations where other beings within those realms can present themselves in different ways. And you have to remember that I've got a conscious mind, I've got my subconscious mind, I've got my spiritual self. And I'm a big fan of sci-fi. I love my science fiction. Almost anything with the word star in it, I'm a big fan of. Star Wars, Star Trek, Stargate. And with that, I'm also a big fan of ancient aliens sort of theories. And when you kind of merge all of that with the conscious, the subconscious, and the Hollywood theatrics, I do think that sometimes spirit use that as a palette. Now, I like to believe that sometimes they use it a palette as a little way of reminding me that the authors of some of those shows are perhaps not too far from the beaten track, and their influence is not necessarily pure intelligence, creativity from their own mind, but perhaps from sort of other realms. So all of that can come in. And as I look to open and expand my mind, I find that spirit beings are able to influence the way that they present themselves. But yeah, 9 times out of 10, as a spiritualist medium, it is the spiritual self that they are coming through and they are giving. Now, Simon, I've drawn a card for you. This is the card here. It is the Beast. Okay, interesting, because we were just talking about dragons, weren't we? And although I have a water dragon associated to me in a form of protection, with this red beast, I have the elements of fire. Okay, and the elements of protection. So this beast in this card is not winged at all. There are horns, and actually you could look at this card and think, oh, it almost looks like the devil or a devilish spirit. But this beast is a protection. Okay, so I want to surround you by protection, and the element of fire in particular, I want to talk about heat and light. Being a very powerful protective element for you right now. Why is it that this beast is here and showing that they are here to protect you? It is about you, and it's about your foundations, Simon. And I'm being told by Bear, one of my guides, that you would be aware about this. This would be confirmation for you, Simon, and that this beast, you would understand the significance of having an elemental guide, a protector, a guardian, or a guardian angel, for want of better words, within the spirit world, working with you and protecting you. And this is a result of you upping it a gear. That's what Bear's saying to me. You have upped a gear. And in terms of the level of foundations that you are working at, your psychic and spiritual protection is very good. And this is the perfect platform for you to continue to work, for you to continue to develop, for you to continue to invest. Okay. So Simon, that card was for you. I hope I've answered your question, and I hope that all of that makes sense. And as I say, folks, you're welcome to feedback, like Claire was doing. If I'm giving you a message and it all makes sense, you're very welcome to verify that. But certainly do challenge me, folks. If it's a no, give me a no, and I will do something about that. I will treat it as a challenge, and I will go back to them and ask them why. Mary Brinkley, good evening to you too. Welcome to the show this evening. Sarah Weston, evening all, joining us on YouTube. Lovely to have you with us, Sarah. Rebecca Huntington sends us the pink-figured, I always think about Pink Sarah there, Sarah Warman, the lovely Sarah Warman. Looking forward to seeing next week. Spiritualist medium and the heart. Thank you for sharing that love, Rebecca. Ava Rose Evans, do spirits talk to you about Akashic records of their loved ones here? Oh, good question. And I think I'm going to answer that twofold, Ava. So the Akashic records, one question, and do spirits talk to me about them? So yes, I am aware of the presence of those records, and yes, occasionally people talk about their records. Now, as a spiritualist medium, when I believe my primary job is to give someone evidence of life after death, or life after that change we call death, life after life, 9 times out of 10, no, they don't talk about any of those records. They talk about some evidence of being around that person and the direction of what's maybe going on in their life. But as I look to open up my own sort of understanding of the universe, and I'm absolutely fascinated by the concept of the records and of the concept of reincarnation and of karma. So I believe that there are halls of learning within the spiritual realms. And I say realms because although I think there's only one afterlife, as in only one life after this life, actually, I think there are many dimensions and realms for us to explore. And there are various halls of learning, schools, primary schools, colleges and nurseries, right through to, higher education and universities. And within these schools and these halls of learning, there are, of course, access to records. And as a human being, our incarnation becomes a matter of fact in the spirit world and is attributed to those records. To a certain extent, if you take the element of time as we understand it and you pause for a second and you maybe throw in a bit of Doctor Who theatrics, you get to the point of saying that perhaps from the spirit world, with time not being as relevant, the archaic records or the arkashic records actually become like blockbuster video. And perhaps there is the opportunity before you incarnate and have that experience as a human being like me, as Ashley Robinson, you go to those records and it's like blockbuster video and you find the cover, the old VHS or DVD cover, and you say, right, Ashley Robinson, let's have a look at that life. And people that are astrologists and people who can tell you more about tarot cards. We'll talk about an element of destiny, and perhaps the synopsis at the back of that DVD as you're looking at that life, it will give you some of that. Now, is it a matter of fact because it hasn't yet happened on Earth in the 3D? Is an element of destiny that could happen, a path that is likely to be trodden based on the ingredients, the time and place of birth to those sort of parents. So I absolutely believe it is possible. And I think that if we talk about reincarnation as a concept, then of course you can also talk about the ability to regress to a past life. And I think that when you either do that through regression or meditation, if you have had a previous incarnation and you're able to access information about that experience, I think it's you go to those records, either in a meditative state or an out-of-body state, and you can learn aspects of that experience. Now, I think it's possible. I don't think it's necessary. I think that if we were meant to have knowledge of those records in this life, we would have them. And the fact is we are scrubbed clean the vast majority of the time and sent on our merry way to have that experience. But there are occasions where people have a more open record. In fact, one of the shows I was just talking about, Ancient Aliens, I was watching a brilliant episode about a fantastic Egyptologist, a young British woman who in early 1900 had been declared dead by medical doctors. And as they'd come back to declare her dead and take her body, she was back to life. Now, she'd fallen down some steps. After she came back to, she started giving knowledge of ancient Egypt. And actually, during this life and experience of this lady, she had this absolute jaw and fascination. She told her parents about going home to Egypt. And she believed that she'd lived and previously incarnated as an Egyptian priestess. And she was able to give so much fantastic knowledge of Egypt and help archaeologists find buried tombs that were previously unknown, that there are some alternative scholars that would say, yeah, we do believe that was the reincarnation of that Egyptian priestess. She eventually married an Egyptian, and I think, and settled there. And without any formal training, become the one of the best known Egyptologists. Now, I think that sounds like it could have all been as exactly as she said. And that knowledge that she then had in this life was like a permanent tap back to those Akashic records. And she was tapping back into that and learning. I also believe in the point of learning from those experiences. Now, although I said, and I'm going to contradict myself here, although I said you don't need to know anything about a previous life because you need to focus on this life, you need to live this life and have this experience, I'm going to throw in the spanner that is called karma, Ava. Because if you throw in that spanner that's karma, the idea being that for every wrong there's a right, the yin yang and that equal of it, there is the opportunity, of course, to build positive karma energy throughout your life experience, and of course negative karma energy. And perhaps you get to the end of the experience as a human being only to discover that you have accumulated negative energy, negative karma, and therefore even though you want to progress within the spiritual realms, you find yourself unable to because of that negative energy. And therefore you decide to go back and incarnate again to work off that karma, work off that negative energy. And therefore the previous knowledge you have from those Akashic records gives you the opportunity perhaps to choose the next life or choose the incarnation or some of the raw ingredients of it. So I spoke about some of the hypothetics. All of that, Ava, is my humble opinion. And I always say to people, everything I share on this show is my knowledge and what I believe to be the truth, based on the executive committee of people that sit in that spirit world and guide me. But of course, they don't always agree with each other. I mean, Ralph Steadman, who's with me right now, is saying that's exactly as I told you, boy. Keep going. That's right. And I found no reason to not believe it now I'm here. But then you get people like Bear shaking his head and say, well, I've been here a lot longer in the spirit world this time round than you have, and I've not necessarily found that out. But Bear's also undergoing a form of training and investment himself as someone that actually died in his last earthly experience in the 1600s. So again, time is not necessarily relevant in the spirit world, and therefore the amount of time you spent in the spirit world in our earthly years is not necessarily relevant either. So Ava, hopefully that answers your question. I've drawn a card for you as well. Beautiful peacock. Okay. Libido. And in this card, I want to talk about, Ava, your mojo. Where's your mojo gone? Because I feel like you just don't feel like you're bringing all of you to be right now. That's what I'm being told. Okay. Yeah. You're not. Okay, thank you. Authentic. You don't feel like you are your true and authentic self all of the time, Ava. And like the peacock that's got the beautiful feathers, you are packing those feathers, but you've been unable to display them to their true magnificence. And in this card in particular, we have a snake in the grass. And perhaps the snake is attracted to the beautiful peacock with the feathers. And there is a reason that the other peacock has not yet shown their feathers. They are proceeding with caution. And I want to say that you haven't lost your mojo, Ava, but you've got this opportunity to get it back. Okay, by get it back, I mean to be at your best more of the time. Okay, don't judge yourself as being your best all of the time. That's not possible. And if you're at your best all of the time, it wouldn't be your best. It would be your routine. And our routine is like our satisfactory, and it's our ability to just keep on moving. But the opportunity to be at your best more of the time. Peacock is your spirit animal, and you feel whole. Wonderful, Ava. And you're very welcome for me answering your question. That was your message. Keep the questions coming, folks. It's taking us off in a nice direction here. Kelly McKeating sends big love to us all. Love and light to you, Kelly McKeating. Rob Heath, evening all. Sorry I'm late. No worries, sir. Thanks for joining us, Rob. Welcome this evening. Kimi Ola, I think, was it Kemi Ola? Good evening to you, joining us on Facebook. Mary Dixie, hello. We were just talking about you. Your ears must be burning. Rita Clark, new on here. Welcome, Rita. A special welcome to you. I'm being spiritual this evening. You can ask us anything, Rita, so get some good questions. Stacey Fanon, are you assigned a spirit guide before you're born or after you're born? Oh, lovely question, Stacey. Thank you very much. I've drawn a card for you, which is the wheel, and I will give you some context to that in a moment. To answer your question, yes. Absolutely. I believe that all of us have an assigned spirit guide at the point of conception. Okay. So as we are conceived, and it's not that sort of show, I don't need to do the birds and the bees, but at the point of conception, and the spirit world hold out their hands, and that beam of light and energy and love that come together to create that conception over the next 9 months, as that conception is developing and life is developing within the body, and the consciousness probably coming in to the baby and the personality at around sort of 6 months point. All of that is going on, but the spirit guide has been assigned. Okay. And to use something which is almost certainly not true, imagine like a school of guides, and guides graduate from school, and they're like, okay, I've graduated, I'm ready for my first assignment, and the principal are like, right, we've got a really good one for you. You've got a choice. You've got Ashley Robinson or Stacey Fanon. These are the likely lives and incarnations, and Stacey's going to need you here, but Ashley's going to need you there, and one's going to go off in this direction, one's going to go in that direction, but actually we think the right fit for you is Stacey. And you, Jane, why don't you take Ashley? And the idea is that the guide team, the principal guide, is assigned to us. So at that point of birth, they are with us. They are there like a coiled spring, ready to go to action. Now, the reason I've gone further and I've said about the point of conception, because sadly, not all conceptions lead to successful birth. Sometimes that's because of physical health, sometimes because that's of personal decision. And what I am told from my spirit guides is that the spirit guide was assigned at that point of conception. And for the conception, the spirit being, although they are still developing over the 9 months to become a human being, if they are unable to be born, the development continues in the spirit world. And often that can be fast tracked, but not necessarily. It might still take 9 months, and they then have the ability to go to nurseries and colleges and schools. And we dedicated an entire show to this. But yeah, our primary spirit guide, like Jiminy Cricket's, our consciousness, assigned to us from the moment that we are conceived, and then when we are born, right through that birth. And I say they're like a coiled spring. I actually believe that at that point of conception, the spirit being, and we've got your mother and father biologically coming together to create this, there's a bit of a contract or a bit of a chat as a being where you sort of say, right, I'm getting ready for this life. This is the sort of thing I'm looking for. And like a good, I'm going to go for a sports analogy now because I play rugby, Stacey. But right, Ash, when you get down there, you're gonna find this good, and a couple of years later, your sister's going to join you, and you're going to have these problems. You're going to have a major stroke when you're 25, but don't worry about it. It's going to be a spiritual awakening for you. And in that rugby sense, I've got this guide like briefing me over the 9 months to the point of birth, getting me ready for that life. They give me the equivalent of a walkie-talkie, Stacey, and they stuff it in my rucksack of life. And the guide is there like a coiled spring, radio on standby, ready to go. But it is down to me to even understand that the radio exists and that the guide also has the other radio. It is down for me to learn, to be aware of the radio, to learn how to use that radio and to talk to them, and then to ask them questions and to ask them for guidance. And of course, the frustration being that in the spirit world, quick thought, quick think, click of the fingers, everything happens immediately. But in this, the 3D world, I can't always pick up the vivid images and the perception straight away. So I need to develop a new relationship. I need to ask them for help. And like Jiminy Cricket in Pinocchio, I have free will and personal responsibility to make my own decisions and my own choices. So I don't always have to agree. Now, sometimes that pull, like the elasticated pull, I always think about that as my guide. Come on, Ash, over here, trying to pull me back onto the straight and narrow, onto the path that is before me to get the best of my experiences. And at other times, me pulling away from that gut feeling, that instinct is my guide, banging drums and tambourines, like, wake up, listen to me, and try and get my attention. So absolutely, I think all of that is possible. I think we all have at least one principal guide that stay with us right through to the end of the experience, and we reunite again in that waiting room in heaven, and we go, right, shall we have a bit of a debrief, Ash? Let's have a look. A bit like, this is your life. This is what you did. This is how you did it. This is what went well. This is what you could have done more of. This is what you could have had. This is what you did have. I think all of that can take place with the guide. But throughout your life, of course, that guide can bring in guides to guide them, coaches to coach them, mentors to mentor them, to guide and coach us. I spoke about my mediumship guide. I have a guide that helps with my healing. Now, I'm not an accredited healer. So I don't practice that gift of spiritual healing other than, with my immediate family. But there is a guide there to help me with my healing, a guide there to help me with my patience. I feel that I've got a guide at the moment to help me with my temper, as I have a bit of a temper problem that I'm trying to work on, and then bringing them in to help me. So all of that is absolutely possible. Okay, amazing to know, says Stacey, and I hope I've answered your question. Now, I've given you the wheel. Okay, and this wheel card, it's a water wheel, okay? And you can just see that the tips of the wheel, Stacey, are in the water. And as the water trickles, the wheel starts to turn. And this wheel is a big wheel. And it is powering a small wheel that is powering a cog that is powering another wheel. And there are things going on behind the wheel. And I feel that there's some extra oomph, okay, that is needed for you. And what I've got within the card is I've got this sense of rain. And the rain is a downpour. It is directly above the wheel, and it is adding to the velocity, the power of the wheel. And there is this sense, Stacey, that you want things, things are happening, but you want them to happen a little bit faster, a little bit more powerful, a little bit more vivid. And Spirit is saying to me they're here to add some oomph to give you some oomph to this wheel. And you'd understand about this personal situation in your life at the moment. It's developing a bit like a, a Polaroid. I'm looking at your photograph, Stacey. If that's a current photograph, you might not be old enough to remember Polaroid photographs, but the instant photos, before we all had, smart cameras and stuff on our phones. But it's just like it's developing, and it's just like you want it to happen a bit faster. And I'm here to sort of say that everything is lined up, ready to go. The rain will add some oomph to it, and it'll also increase the height of the river. The river will flow. That will be stronger. Everything will keep on keeping on, Stacey. So, Stacey, I do hope that that makes sense, and you've understood the purpose of the card, and that I've answered your question. Thank you. Just going to take a break, folks. Have a look at some brilliant adverts about some different things going on. Get your questions ready, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Spiritual Psychics TV is hosting our annual recognition of achievements, acknowledging those who dedicate their lives through spiritual acts of kindness. Candidates can register and put themselves forward to be acknowledged. Viewers can also nominate who they feel should be recognized for an achievement. Exclusively broadcasted live on SPTV, with 100% of the public votes being announced on Saturday the 27th of May from 7:30 p.m. For more information, please visit awards.spiritualpsychicstv.online. Spiritual Psychics TV, bringing spiritual people together. My Spiritual Designs, ethical creativity for spiritual people. myspiritualdesigns.com. A new service offering graphic and website designs, along with video animations for those who serve spirit in their own way. We can create promotional videos with voiceovers and music, and custom-made apps. There are no monthly or yearly fees. No off-the-shelf solutions, all personalized to match your own unique vision. Our website deals offer your very own online events, service booking system which accepts PayPal and Stripe payments, a contact form, gallery, and video player. Our website deals starts from as little as £150 up to only £210. For more details, please visit myspiritualdesigns.com.
Hello, folks, and welcome back. I hope you had an opportunity to check out some of those adverts. And the SPTV Awards is a fantastic opportunity for you to nominate your favourite mediums, speakers, demonstrators, and presenters. And I was honoured last week to receive a nomination as a medium and as a presenter. So at the very least, folks, if you're enjoying the show tonight, head over to the site, register, and give me a little vote. It'd be lovely to receive that. It was lovely to receive that nomination. Lovely to get a vote. And of course, you can nominate absolutely anybody, folks. They don't have to be one of the SPTV presenters. Catherine W joins us on YouTube. Good evening to you, Catherine. Isabel says, hello, here for the first time. Love and light right back at you too, Isabel Karina, joining us on Facebook. Good evening. Kaylee, good evening, Kaylee. Sorry we can't see you at the weekend next week, but I hope to see you soon. Love and light to you and the family. Kerry Fawley says, I've been trying to connect with my spirit guides for a while now. I'm in a very good place in my life and I feel positive. I meditate and get plenty of exercise and sleep, but still can't seem to get anywhere. Do you have any advice to myself or others struggling with this hurdle? Absolutely, Kerry. You're doing all the right things, so keep on doing it. I find one of the most powerful meditations is some sort of, like, I call it the gatekeeper meditation. And there's a few different examples online. If you go, or I think you're on Facebook tonight, if you go to the archives of my show, there is a show dedicated to meet your guides, and we dedicated about an hour and a half to talking about how to meet your guides. But I actually did the meditation there. And it's all about getting to that point. You say you are meditating, you're getting plenty of exercise. You want your meditation perhaps to be guided, where it takes you to, for want of a better words, a meeting place. And in my my favorite guided meditation to meet my gatekeeper, I effectively go through the process of walking into some woods and down and through some streams, and I eventually end up in what I call the meeting circle. It's a little bit like Stonehenge, but I can sit down in the Stonehenge, and this is where my guides and my communicators sort of come. So find a good example of that. There's a few on the SPTV archives. Reverend Leslie Morton does a guided meditation here, but actually having someone that can guide you and direct you to that meeting place, because when you're in that subconscious place with the meditation, you kind of want to be touched. If I was doing meditation for you now and you'd got to that place, it'd be like, Kerry, someone's there. What do they look like? Are they a man? Are they a woman? What do their hands look like? Take their hands, feel their hands, smell them. All of those types of things, you're kind of provoking your senses within the meditation to be aware about what's there. So if you've got someone that could meditate with you and guide you, I think that's always a great thing. Someone like a circle leader would do this at a circle too. So have a go at doing that guided meditation, ideally with a circle leader. Very least, go back and find the session we did on meeting your guides. And a quick card for you is this prison card, and I've got you, Kerry, in the prison, not because you've been naughty, but because you have created a prison of your own making. And this is the feeling of being trapped. Now, interesting, isn't it? Based on your question, there's this idea that you want to overcome something, and you feel like you are being prevented. The bars are up, but actually in the background you've got this window coming in, you've got this beautiful light. There's nothing for you in this cell, is what I want to say, Kerry. Is the door is open. Push the door open, go out. You don't have to be in there. This is a jail or a cell, a prison of your own making. Gently open the door. Maybe start your meditation there. Imagine yourself in this cell with the bars up, the beautiful warmth of the light. The sun has come up in the east, and it's like, I need to get out there while the sun's at its meridian, and leave that prison, get out there, follow that sun as it goes on its journey over the meridian, as it looks to set in the west. Go and find a meeting circle. And yeah, glad that you're going to look up the gatekeeper meditation that we did. It's not mine that I wrote, actually. It's one that I use. But if you Google gatekeeper meditation, there are ones you can read. I always find it's useful if someone's reading it for you and you find yourself in a nice sort of comfortable spot that you can do that. The other thing is you might find that you can automatically write or draw. So have a notepad or a sketch pad handy, or record yourself while you're meditating and see if you say anything. Thanks, Kerry. Hopefully I've answered that question for you. And that card was for you. We're going to do our next question. Sarah Weston, I can get to my gate, but can never see my keeper or guides as they're obliterated by a kaleidoscope of color. Well, Sarah, you are seeing this beautiful kaleidoscope of color. So this is the next step. Why not try and pick up the meditation from that point? So if you know how to get there, have a fast track version. I call it the spirit helicopter. Take me back to that point and work with the color. So we spoke about people not always showing themselves in another form. Color is in itself a level of energy, and there is intelligence within energy. So interrogate the color. What colors are you seeing? And say, what does this color mean? What does that color mean? Why in that order? And then ask them to present themselves, to come up with an identity that you could comprehend, Sarah. So good point. Sorry that you're feeling sad by it. But look, I've just drawn this card for you. It's the work card. There you are as the brown copper coil, surrounded by all these cogs, okay? And the cogs are your higher self, all of them attuned and working together. And this is about you as the brass cog coming together and working with the silver cogs in juxtaposition, okay? And I've just got that card that Spirit directed me to there. Keep on doing it. You've got the color. Okay, color is nothing. Color is something. Color is energy. Energy is intelligence. Work with that. Interrogate it. Challenge your color communicator. What does this mean? And take it forward from there. And if you can't do that during the meditation, as soon as you come out of the meditation, write all the colors down and then say, right, as you go to sleep, Spirit, I want to know what those colors mean. And I'm going to start with the first color and then get some buzzwords and some headlines and start to blend it together. Good luck and best wishes with that, Sarah. Angeline Foot, good evening, or good evening to you, Angeline, joining us on Facebook. Lovely to have you on the show tonight. Jasmine Brown says, it's all fascinating. What happens if someone comes back to another life after dying young, but generations remember them, and then when they die, they have two different families to get in touch with them? How do they communicate with both families? Is that why sometimes when readers have joint communications with people, like people say, it sounds like my grandma, and someone else would say it sounds like my sister? Oh, Jasmine, lovely question. Lots of different ways to go. Now, I'm going to answer quickly with a couple of points. So the vast majority of the time, my spirit communicators tell me they often wait 2 or even 3 generations of family, so people they knew in their physical life, come to the spirit world before choosing to reincarnate. Some people tell me that they don't. They have one earthly experience as a human being, boom, done. Other people talk about the fact that when they get to the spirit world, they won't ever communicate. They've not chose to incarnate. They've just decided to go off and work within those realms of the spirit world and continue that sort of progression. Other people, and there are certain major religions around the world, I think, Buddhism, being one, and some ancient China, they talk about the fact that the incarnation happens immediately. And in fact, some of the emperors of the ancient world, and indeed, I think even in modern times, are chosen to the microsecond that the old emperor died in this life, and they're looking for the person that was born within that second as the potential runners for the new emperor or the sort of new leaders. So all of that, I think, is absolutely possible. Some people would argue that your personality, so let's take me, Ashley Robinson, human being experience, start September 1982. Some people would argue that isn't the spirit and the soul incarnate as Ashley Robinson. It is like this pint glass of water. Okay, so let's say that my Cheers Boston tumbler is a vessel, and this vessel is my soul. Let's use that label. Inside the soul is all this energy, which is the water. When I incarnate as Ashley Robinson, I just pour a little bit out. The beaker, the mug, stays in the spirit realm. And when I finish the experience as Ashley Robinson, that energy goes back to that beaker. And therefore, Ashley Robinson was just a way of me experiencing something as a human being. And therefore, if other bits of this glass, each time poured here, poured out, pour there, is continually being refilled, when all that comes back into the vessel, each individual experience is able to communicate, because there's an element of that personality. It's part of something bigger. Some people refer to that as their higher self, or the higher self, the soul, that they're able to do that. Equally, I think it's possible that if they're actually in this glass, the entire liquid is the spirit, and the spirit incarnates, and at the end of that incarnation reincarnates, and then while in heaven chooses to incarnate again, a bit like that film, it's not Ghost, there's another film, isn't there, where 2 spirit beings fall in love. If my dad's still watching, my dad will remember the name of this film, but some of you might do too. It's a wonderful film, and they absolutely unconditional love in the spirit world. She incarnates before him. He's absolutely gutted, wants to incarnate, knows he's going to have his memory scrubbed, spends most of his early life not meeting her, is about to be called back to the spirit world, and it's all about them trying to meet. Perhaps that's absolutely possible too. I think it is absolutely possible. And the final part of that then, is that why joint connections? I think joint connections is possible. Perhaps the Cheers glass, the vessel is communicating, and there's elements inside that of different personalities and energies all communicating at the same time. I also think, Jasmine, that it's a bit like buses. And I always describe my spiritual mediumship as being like a waiting room. And what I find is that the buses come together, and that like attracts like. So a couple of weeks ago, I was working with a spiritualist church. We had 160 people inside the church. It was absolutely amazing to see the church so packed. 160 people. Everyone would have known at least one person that's in the spirit world. Probably knew dozens, if not hundreds. You imagine all of that spirit energy all in the church. We've only got an hour and a half to give about 15 messages. So sometimes I think jump on. And I'm making this up, Jasmine. No, I'm not. I was about to make it up, and I've actually got a guide telling me, no, there is a communicator for you. So Jasmine, I'm going to contextualize this example as part of your message. So Jasmine, I've got a woman communicating with me. This woman is claiming to be a grandmother figure to you, mum's mum. She's giving me the letter C, which is a cancerous type condition, often symbolic as a cancerous type condition, but she's talking about an infection of some sort upper body that she's had. Jasmine, you understand this. She's given me the letter B. I know your surname is Brown, but I feel that because she showed me the wedding ring. She talked about the significance of her being an in-law, or you having no Brown. Brown is the name in-law. She is family on the other side. I want to go to your mum's side of the family, and that there is a B of a first name. I mean, it's a Bertie or a Bob. It's a B sounding noise, not just the Brown. And as this woman communicates with me, she talks about sending you love. She talked about telling you she's absolutely fine. Okay, thank you. And she was just talking about the rising sun, Jasmine. So I've mentioned it, I think, several times. That I love the sun. Spiritualists talk about sunflowers all the time. She's drew the sun card as well, and she influenced me to draw that. And I've got you dancing around the sun. And she's like, Jasmine, she's like a solar panel. She works better in the sun. She gets her energy. She draws her energy from that. And I want to give you this love of hers. And I want you, like the sunflower, Jasmine, turn and face the sun. I know that was something I said previously. But this woman claiming to be a grandmother is telling you to turn and face the sun. And what she's telling me is, okay, thank you. She said, don't worry too much about what has been done or has been said. As you are doing, focus on the next chapter and your reaction to that situation. So there's been some worry and there's been some anxiety, Jasmine, about words and a situation around conflict. She is telling me, don't worry too much about that. Focus as you're doing on your reaction to that, Jasmine, and you'd understand that. Now, as part of me contextualizing your example, because I had this woman come in who's claiming to be a grandmother, linked, thank you, you're welcome, Jasmine, thank you for the feedback. Actually, someone else as a grandmother might come in like a bus, and they go, oh, why are you there with Jasmine? What about Fred? Tell Fred I'm here as well. And actually, like attracts like. Birds of a feather flock together. So I think sometimes when people say, oh, that sounds like my communicator, mediums are just human beings. We don't always get it absolutely right. We get flooded with these vivid sensations of evidence, and sometimes we just get it wrong. And actually, we end up delivering one message, like I've just done now for you, Jasmine, that actually someone next to you was like, actually, I really felt that you were with me, and everything you said made sense for me. Maybe their communicator was up there too. I call it like buy one, get one free, where the communicators have kind of blended that energy, and they're like, do you know what? I know that they're getting that message. And even though you've not gone to them, they know that that makes sense to them. And of course, everyone's loved ones are in the spirit world. So Jasmine, hopefully I've answered your question and you've understood your message. I think there was a couple of things that flashed up there. You said you did understand it, yeah, correct, and you liked the analogy of the beaker. What does everyone else think, folks, about incarnation? I know that Julie Caswell's watching tonight. We've often spoke about being in more than one place at the same time, just being an element to us. Karen White, guides. I don't know what their actual job is. What does he guide me to? I've seen mine, but do we have more than one? So, Karen, I think we all have at least one principal guide. And they're like Jiminy Cricket. They're helping us develop right from, baby right through to life. They're helping us with influencing our intuition and our instinct, the right and wrong, our consciousness. And I always think Jiminy Cricket in Pinocchio, for me, is quite spiritual. There they are for Pinocchio, the wooden boy, and obviously he has his own conscience. And Jiminy Cricket trying to tell Pinocchio what to do, but Pinocchio goes off and does his own thing anyway. We just watched a remake of Pinocchio with my boys a couple of weeks ago. It was a very, very cool animation with Pixar, and even more spiritual Jiminy Cricket and this, the old guy that gets the old fairy dust and sort of comes to life. So the guide ultimately has no real job other than to dedicate their being, their experience in that spirit world to you for your entire earthly experience. That's their job, however which way you use them. If you're using, what do I do? Do I zig or zag? Do I go left or right? Do I jump or duck? All of those types of decisions, if you want influence from your guide, then part of their job is to help you with that. If you want to work with the gifts, their job is to signpost you, to guide you in that direction. Sometimes it's for them to carry you. I always love that poem, that beautiful poem, Footprints in the Sand, where there's only one set of footprints, I'm being carried. Your guide is to carry you through that, to keep you going. Sometimes I've had a guide whisper in my ear, fasten your seatbelt. And I've done that in the car. And then actually some lunatics pulled out in front of me to do an emergency stop. You could say it was your higher self. It's your subconscious picking up the fact they're about to walk up the road. I believe it was my guide, and they're like my choreograph, my coordinator. So Karen, hopefully that makes sense for you, and I've answered your question. The card I've drawn for you is the card of liberation. sense of freedom, Karen, as I leave the safety of the castle and the grounds of the fortification of the wall. My final hurdle was to cross this poisonous snake who has in some way kept me trapped. And as I go, I'm on my horse, I'm over the bridge, and I'm into the water, and I feel like the world is my oyster, Karen. And I want to say there's this real sensation that you have at the moment of feeling less shackled, of a bit freer, of a bit taller, of a bit more open, and that this is good for you. Keep on keeping on. Enjoy the fresh air, enjoy the sunlight, and I also want to say enjoy the new experiences. And you might feel a little bit more vulnerable, Karen. That's why I feel I have the castle and the walls surrounding you. You've taken yourself out. That could be a point of danger. It could be a risk. But with risks come opportunities, not just threats. And I feel that there's risk, there is this opportunities here, and it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable. Trust your intuition, trust your guide if you want to, Karen. I hope I've answered your question, and that card reading was for you. Okay, we shall do our next question. Jane Bradley, hi. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too, Jane. Very special welcome to you. Ask us anything, Jane. Sophie Parker, my lovely cousin, just managed to jump on. I hope you've had a wonderful session. So far, so good. Sophie has worked on the show a couple of times, and she is a developing psychic artist, a wonderful, talented artist, now working with her gifts. And for those that follow me on the socials, at Ash Robinson Medium, on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, you'll see I've added a reel of some of the art that Sophie did as part of our double demonstration of mediumship a little while ago. So check that out, folks. Psychic doodling and drawing. Jolanda, beautiful name. I love that name, Jolanda. Jolanda, was it Boshizin? If I've not pronounced that right, give it to me phonetically. Boshuzin, perhaps Jolanda. I really like saying your name. Loves the information. Thank you very much. Stacey Thomas. Does spirit move things in your house? Do they send messages via television or music? Yes, they do move things in my house. A mate of mine, Dean, often moves my keys just to wind me up because he can. I wish he'd move them back and help me find them when I can't find them. Sometimes spirit do it to get my attention. I know if I've not been paying attention to spirit, that they might more subtle moves. I'm fascinated by the concept of electronic voice phenomenon and television and sort of music, working with things like spirit boxes or Frank's boxes. Julie runs some very good sessions where we use the Frank's box. And I do regularly ask spirit to a certain extent. I challenge them to influence via the television or music. I'm convinced the spirit influence my mum and dad every Sunday morning. We're in a spiritualist church when they go to broadcast the service, because I seem to leave the church, everything's working absolutely fine, and as soon as Sunday morning comes along and Richard's dialing him up as he did on Sunday morning to go live, something goes wrong. And I'm convinced that spirits throw a few gremlins in the system. What I would love for spirit to do, my challenge is to do it this Sunday, is to fix it, because it drives my mum and dad absolutely mad, and they're so frustrated when things don't work. Equally, for any of you that work in the IT world, you know that nothing ever works according to first planned or standard operating procedures. And the reason that there are thousands of lines of code and standard operating procedures is you have to turn it on and off again, work it through, plug them back in one at a time. There's always not 100% guarantee. Computers are very accurate. If you give computers everything they need and the right instructions and the right code, and they'll always give you the right answer. But give them the wrong code or the wrong signal, the wrong input, and they go kaput. And I think spirit can sometimes subtly influence that, sometimes feedback on microphones and stuff like that. I see it less in this home, but I do generally ask them not to, because my wife doesn't like to be spooked. My kids find it quite funny and quite fascinating, and particularly my middle son at the moment, Noah, talks a lot about spirit giving him influence and moving things and doing other stuff. So thank you for that, Stacey. The question has hopefully been answered. And I'll give you some money, metaphoric money, Stacey. I've got some money here being unearthed. After a hard day in the field, Stacey, there's you with the horse and the plough, ploughing the fields. There is money, there is treasure to be found. And I want to talk about this being some gifts, spiritual gifts that you are working with right now, and you finding a new value in them, Stacey, and a new meaning in them. I want to gently encourage you. I know you've asked a question about physical phenomena, moving things in the house. I want to talk about you doing this gently and with caution. I'm being told that you need to make sure that you are well grounded and well protected, and that you switch everything off after you've switched it back on. But treat every communication as a level of intelligence, and then test and challenge that level of intelligence, Stacey. Just like the Fox sisters did in their house when they heard the tap, tap, tap. Mr. Happyfoot, as they used to sometimes call him. Give us, one tap for A, 2 taps for B, 26 for Z, or wherever it was. Long, slow way of communicating, but test your intelligence is that final bit I was giving for you, Stacey. I feel that you have actually had things move and that you've questioned it, and you've also had some physical, perhaps, phenomena happen around electronic voice phenomenon. That's in the white noise and the static of the telly. Test your communicator, stay well grounded and protected, have their love from a spirit world, and also mine, Stacey. Stay short. Do you believe that children's adoptive parents should be birth parents and they were born to the wrong parents originally? Good question, Stace. My personal opinion, I think that every child is meant to be. And to a certain extent, every experience is meant to be. Now, experiences are influenced by personal decisions and personal responsibility. And I think that children in particular should go to the place that they're going to be loved and cared for the most. Now, sadly, around the world, that doesn't always happen. In other times, because of adoption and circumstances, children have a better life and a better experience as a result. So I know that I haven't fully answered that. I believe that every child is meant to be. And you ask, do I believe that children's adoptive parents should have been the birth parents and they were born to the wrong parents? Some parents, particularly those that may adopt or foster, either can't, won't, or shan't have children, and it's their way of having that experience, which I think they were meant to have. Now, of course, if you were to then be really controversial, say, Ash, if that's true, what about all the awful experiences? Children that go into foster families and are abused, or predators look after them. You're telling me that that experience was meant to be? Well, Mr. Ralph Steadman, who's the chair of my exco, will say, yes. Now, you're not meant to understand it now. You will understand more in the spirit realms. But all of those experiences were important. They were meant to be. And there will be some good that comes out of it, perhaps afterwards. Perhaps in a next incarnation, that person will use that experience to come back and influence new law or new policy or new training to protect other children. But those experiences are meant to be. As Ashley Robinson, even when Ralph was alive, I used to struggle to understand why anything bad would be happen. Perhaps that's because that in this life, in this experience, I'm unable to comprehend it, because I can't understand from a selfish point of view why I would choose to do anything bad. I feel like I survive any of the bad stuff that happens, and I'm looking for the good things. But perhaps I'm working off some karma. Perhaps it was meant to be part of my experience. Perhaps I signed a contract with other friends that I've incarnated with, and there was a soul contract there that we were meant to have those experiences together. And then we're meant to grow together. So, Stace, hopefully that answers your question. I will draw a card for you, and it has come to 9:15. The card I shall give you is the puzzle. Here you are, Stace, at the puzzle. The doors. Do I go left or do I go right? Face at the door is the guardian, Stace, who holds the key. You must choose wisely, is what the guardian will say to you. But he will wink and say, this key opens both doors. You can go left, you can go right. And the path of least resistance is perhaps the path you will travel, Stace. The path that is well beaten, well trodden. Lots of people have gone on that path, Stacey. Take this key, open the door and go left. Well, I'm here to tell you that you can also go right. You can have that experience. Both paths ultimately lead to your utopia, your paradise. You'll go in that direction. But the path on the right is actually uphill. There's a massive mountain in the way. You're going to have to climb it or circumvent it, but you will need to adapt. and overcome those obstacles. And I'm here to say, as your guardian, Stace, not only does that key open both doors, that you have with you everything you need in this life. You are well trained, you are well equipped, and you will be guided to take that path. And you may find that to go on that path, which is less beaten and less trodden, was also a path you were meant to take. So, Stace, I encourage you to use your free will to make the decision that you feel happy and confident with, and the experience which will excite you. So, Stacey, that was the last reading of the evening. We've come to the end of the show. Oh, go on, please. Richard's just talking to me. Carry on. Oh, we're going to do one more question, folks, actually. Richard has the executive right. Darianne Leanne Smith. Right. Let me just read this question first, folks. Okay. So, Darren, I'm going to answer this question, actually, because I think it's a good question. It's an important one, and I'll share my own personal experience. So, Darianne says, I miscarried my first. Do you think it was a boy? I feel like he's with me all the time, especially at bedtime. I have a dream that I can seem to forget of him and my daughter playing. What does this mean? Darianne, I have 3 little boys now, an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a little baby who's 10 months old. I believe that the first 2 or 3 conceptions that my wife and I had that became failed pregnancies were actually girls. And I believe now, as a result of interrogation with the spirit world, that my wife was unable to carry girls for some sort of reason, and that ultimately we were able to have those failed pregnancies. But I do believe that those children were meant to be. They were part of a pre-design. They were meant to be conceived. They were meant to experience, and actually they grow up in the spirit world now. I think that we lost the first little girl first, and then actually we had twins, which we miscarried, which were a girl and a boy. And I know that they continue to grow and they're looked after in the spirit world, and I've had confirmation of that. I also know that my 3 boys, I believe, all met each other in the spirit world, and that my latest, Oscar, actually missed them. He watched them all incarnate and become human beings and really missed their spirit presence in heaven, and that actually had to say goodbye to them at the equivalent of Heaven's Gate. And a wonderful spiritual poet, Shirley Monaco, shared this poem with me while Claire was pregnant, and it talks about saying goodbye at Heaven's Gate to be reunited, and how excited they were going to be to see the physical incarnation of the boys. Now, my experience there, I'm not looking to supersede or compete with you, but I do want to show empathy with you. And as I ask one of your guides or communicators to come forward, I have someone with me. They're not claiming to be your child, but I do have someone here who's claiming to be a sibling themselves. They are related to you and your family. They're related to your mother, and they are related to your mother's mother. So this would be a great aunt within the family. She is passed with heart failure. She is telling me that she has your boy, and she was with him from the point of conception, and that she tells me that she claims that there was a baby who was unable to walk physical steps on earth, that continue to develop in the spirit realms. Now, she is talking about 9.5, 10, as if I'm maybe at weeks from when the pregnancy was unable to continue. And she's talking about the pregnancy continuing in a spiritual nursery, and she's telling me that they would have incarnated with the gender of a boy, and that she is with them, and they are continuing to grow up, and that they have chosen to catch up. Although they spent the first 12 to 18 months growing up to a similar time clock as you, they were fascinated to say goodbye to a spirit being who would incarnate as a little girl to you, and they have now caught up to be a similar age to a I believe you have a daughter, okay, as what I'm being told. And that this great aunt has also been given the letter D. I know you're Darianne. There is another D within the family. Okay, a boy's name. You had a name for a boy, is what your great aunt, or this lady claimed to be a great aunt, is telling me, Darianne. Okay, Derek. Okay, my grandfather is Derek, but I've got this as if I was going to have a Dell or a Derek, or there was some significance there because my granddad's like, oh, that's a good name, and they're chatting away to your great aunt here in that waiting room. That is heaven. So yes, in answer to your question, I do believe that you may have had the conception that would have been an incarnation of a little boy that has chosen to grow up in the spirit world, and I'm being told that you have. Thank you for the confirmation. You do have a daughter, and that there have been 12 to 18 months, maybe a period of time where they have grown up spirit world and said goodbye to the incarnation that then became their sister, and that your sister, okay, thank you, that his sister would recognize him, and there would be this significance D. So your great aunt was talking about the D, which would also be a sibling. So if Drew is your brother, Darian, and you'd understand that D, that's the significance that your great aunt is giving there. There was also an anniversary. Okay, thank you. Right, we are in February now, so it's the 24th of February. She's telling me that around February. Okay, I don't know if that was either the failed pregnancy, the miscarriage, or what would have been a birth date, but there is an anniversary which is still marked and is somewhat celebrated, and we are aware. Okay, this is okay. Thank you. So he's still a little boy, okay, and she's communicating for him, but he is here, and he was just talking about mummy planted something for me. I've got this sensation of you with the earth, Darian. You'd understand you've planted something in celebration of his life after that change that the baby was unable to go through. His new life in that place I call heaven. And I've got you physically touching the earth when you planted this, and that something has grown. And this was done in celebration of my life. And February being really significant. I feel we've just gone past it. Now we're at 24 now, but I see a 4 and a 1, maybe 14. So Darian, I hope you've understood all of that evidence that they have come forward with, to let you know that they are around you, that they've got someone that they are describing and claiming would have been a baby boy that now grows up in the spirit world after being looked up in spirit nurseries, and that they were around, and that actually your health was unable. Okay, your health would have been very poor, okay, had the pregnancy continued. There were some decisions. Okay, I've got this. Okay, thank you. I've got this little boy that's claiming to have been your little boy, talking about the fact that as a being he was able to influence that, and it wasn't important. It was important for him not to carry on that pregnancy. He continues to develop in the spirit world. So Darian, that was your communicator. Yes, thank you very much for that verification. Richard, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to get to that question. I think it was an important one. And as a Heine, there is a life after this change we call death. Not all of us need to go through the physical experience of a human being to know that we have a place for us in that boon. And Darian, thank you for your verification. Sending you lots of love and light, and that your daughter will continue to play with me and recognize me. I'm around. Okay, thank you. And they have love and light. Now, I didn't get to answer everyone's questions today. Benny was just saying, wife miscarried, then my son was born in the hospital. I put my little finger in his hand and I whispered to him, you can come back and try it again. He squeezed my finger. Lovely. Thank you very much, Benny, for sharing that memory and that experience. You're such a wonderful bunch of people. I love doing this show. I get feedback from you that most of you enjoy it, certainly those that keep coming back. And Richard gives us this fantastic opportunity to chat on a Friday night. I get really excited by questions, and I love working with my executive committee in this way. Do head over to SPTV UK, folks. Check it out. Fantastic website. And of course, do think about voting for me and other members of the team. Should you feel the need. Jasmine Brown, thank you for your shows of fab. Love watching tonight. Jasmine, lovely thing to finish on. Thank you, Julie Caswell. Thank you, Richard, our producer. Good night and God bless to you all. I look forward to communicating and engaging with some of you at Spirit Seeker Weekend. Best wishes and good night. Take care.